My name is Natalie, and until a few months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. A good job, a loving fiancé named Daniel, and a best friend I trusted with my entire heart, Tessa. She and I had been best friends since college. Through breakups, family losses, and late-night ice cream binges, we had been there for each other like sisters. So naturally, when Daniel proposed to me, Tessa was the first person I told. She screamed, cried, hugged me for so long I almost couldn't breathe, and said, "Finally." She helped me pick the dress, plan the bachelorette party, and design the invites. She even came to my bridal fittings and helped me choose between Ivory and Snow White. There wasn't a single thing about the wedding she didn't know about, and maybe that should have been my first warning. Everything was perfect, or at least I thought it was. But sometimes when things look too perfect, it's because someone is hiding something. I started noticing small things, weird things, like how Daniel would pause when I mentioned Tessa, or how I once saw her phone light up during brunch with his name and a heart emoji next to it. She laughed it off and said it was a prank from her niece. I wanted to believe her. I really did. One evening, about 3 weeks before the wedding, I went over to Tessa's apartment to drop off some decorations we were planning to use at the rehearsal dinner. Her car wasn't there, but the door was unlocked, so I let myself in. I wish I hadn't. There on the couch was Daniel's tie, the one I got him for our anniversary, and right next to it was a half-finished glass of wine. Hers. It smelled like her peach rosé. I stood there for a full minute, frozen. Was I jumping to conclusions? Maybe he left it last time he visited. Maybe she was just airing out the place. I didn't say anything that night, or the next day, or the day after that. I convinced myself I was overthinking everything. I mean, she was my best friend. He was my fiancé. Why would either of them betray me? The doubts faded, or maybe I just pushed them deep down. The wedding day arrived like a dream. My mom cried when she saw me in my dress. My dad gave me the tightest hug before walking me down the aisle. The sun was shining. My guests looked happy. My heart felt full. I was marrying the man I loved, surrounded by people I trusted, until I overheard the conversation that shattered everything. Just minutes before the ceremony, I went to the side garden behind the venue to calm my nerves. That's when I heard voices. I hid behind the rose trellis, thinking maybe I was interrupting a private conversation. But when I heard their voices, Daniel and Tessa, I froze. Tessa was whispering fast. "This is your last chance. You don't have to marry her. We can leave. Right now." Daniel hesitated. "It's too late, Tess. Everyone's here. I can't." "You don't love her," she said, almost pleading. "You love me. You've said it so many times. You said it last night." I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. Last night? What did she mean? Last night? I didn't wait to hear more. My hands were shaking. My veil almost slipped off. I stumbled backward into a potted plant and made a noise loud enough for them to notice. I heard footsteps, and I bolted back into the bridal suite, locking the door behind me. Tears smeared my makeup. I couldn't breathe. I stared at my reflection in the mirror and whispered, "What am I supposed to do now?" My heart wanted to crumble, but my brain kicked into gear. I wasn't going to let them see me fall apart. Not today. Not on my day. A soft knock came at the door. It was my maid of honor, Claire. Not Tessa, thank God. Claire had always had a strange feeling about Tessa, but she never said anything until now. "What's wrong?" she asked, seeing my face. I told her. Everything. The wine glass, the tie, the phone call, what I just overheard. Claire didn't hesitate. "You don't have to go through with it." But I looked at her and said something that shocked even me. "Oh, I'm still walking down that aisle." Her eyes widened. "Natalie, I'm going to marry him," I said, breathing deeply. "Then we go to the reception. But guess who's not invited?" That's when Claire smiled, catching on. "Revenge?" "Revenge," I whispered. I wiped away my tears, fixed my makeup, and walked down the aisle with my head held high. Daniel smiled when he saw me. He looked nervous. I looked like an angel. The crowd was full of love and claps and smiles. But deep inside, I was boiling with a secret he didn't know I knew. We said our vows. I said I do. He said I do. But what I had planned for the reception was going to be my real I do. I do take my life back. I do get my revenge. I do get the last word. And just as the officiant announced, "You may now kiss the bride," I leaned in and whispered in Daniel's ear, "Tessa's not coming to the reception." He blinked, confused, but I smiled sweetly as the crowd cheered. Less than an hour later, as we took our wedding pictures near the lake behind the venue, Tessa approached the reception hall entrance in a stunning silver gown. She looked like a movie star, ready to be noticed. But the security guard at the door stopped her. "Name?" he asked. "Tessa Morgan," she said confidently. He scanned the list. His brow furrowed. "Sorry, ma'am, you're not on the guest list." Her smile dropped. "That's impossible. I'm the maid of honor." "No, ma'am. Maid of honor is Claire Anderson. You'll have to step aside." She turned red, stuttering. "Wait, what?" And then she saw Claire, standing inside the glass doors, raising her champagne in a toast. Tessa's eyes flicked behind her and landed on me, arm in arm with Daniel, smiling wide. But this time it was me holding all the cards. She tried to storm past the guard, but two more stepped in. "You'll need to leave now," one said. She's my best friend," Tessa cried. I stepped forward, just enough so she could see me through the glass. I raised my hand slowly, gave her the tiniest wave, and turned my back. That was when she screamed loud enough that half the guests heard it through the walls. But the music inside drowned it all out. And that's when something else happened. Something no one, not even me, was ready for. Daniel suddenly grabbed my arm and said, "We need to talk, now." I looked into his eyes, and for the first time he wasn't hiding it anymore. He knew I knew. I followed him to a corner of the reception hall, past dancing guests and cheering cousins. And then he said something that flipped the entire story upside down. Something that made me rethink everything I thought I knew. "I didn't sleep with her last night," he said, "but I have to tell you what really happened." I stood frozen, champagne glass trembling slightly in my hand. The music behind us pulsed like a heartbeat, but my own chest was silent, still. All I could hear was Daniel's voice echoing in my ears. "I didn't sleep with her last night, but I have to tell you what really happened." He looked scared, not the guilty kind of scared, but the kind that said he knew he should have spoken up long before now. His eyes darted nervously around the reception hall like someone was watching us. I gave him a hard stare. "Then talk," I said coldly. He took a deep breath. "Tessa's been threatening me for months. She said she'd ruin the wedding, ruin you, unless I left you for her." I narrowed my eyes. "So she made you say you loved her? Last night?" Daniel looked ashamed. "No, I did say it. Once, a long time ago. When we had that big fight last year and we took that break for 2 weeks. That's when Tessa came over. I thought you were done with me." My mind shot back to that time. The 2-week silence, the ghosted texts, the pain. I never knew why he went dark on me. He had blamed work. "And you slept with her," I said flatly. "Yes," he said without dodging, "but only once. Afterward, I told her it was a mistake, that I still loved you, but she didn't let go." I wanted to scream, slap him, throw my drink. But instead, I set my glass down on the nearby table. "So, why wait until now to tell me?" She said she'd show up at the wedding with photos, with messages. I thought if I just played along and ignored her, she'd stop. But she didn't. And when she cornered me last night at her apartment— "You went to her apartment?" I snapped. "No. She called and begged me to come get something important. I went because I didn't want her to bring anything to the wedding. When I got there, she tried to kiss me. I pushed her off. Then you heard us in the garden today." I stared at him, heart racing. "So you were telling her it was too late?" "Yes." I didn't know whether to believe him or not. My brain was spinning. Was this just another excuse? Or had Tessa really been manipulating both of us the whole time? As I turned away to think, Daniel gently touched my shoulder. "I love you, Natalie. I made mistakes. But I'm standing here with you right now, not her. I married you. I was silent. Meanwhile, outside the hall, Tessa was losing it. Guests were beginning to whisper. Claire peeked through the glass and motioned for the DJ to turn the music up. A few people were beginning to notice the scene building at the entrance. That's when my cousin, Marcus, a 6'3" former college linebacker, walked up beside me. "You want me to handle her?" he asked with a grin. I gave the tiniest nod. Kindly. He turned, cracked his knuckles, and strutted toward the entrance. Tessa was yelling at the security team now. "I was the maid of honor! She stole my role! That's supposed to be me in there!" She was drawing eyes from passers-by outside the venue. Phones were starting to come out. Marcus stepped outside and stood in front of her like a wall. "Tessa, your name's not on the list. You've been asked to leave. Don't make this uglier than it already is." She stared up at him, her expression melting from fury to fear. But then she saw me standing in the distance and her lips curled. "This isn't over," she shouted toward me. "Everyone's going to know who you really are." I smiled faintly and walked to the mic beside the DJ. The music faded out as I took the stage, surprising the crowd. A hush fell. "I just want to say thank you to everyone who came here to celebrate with us," I began, voice steady. "And thank you for your love and support, even when things aren't quite what they seem. Tonight is about truth, about starting over, and about surrounding yourself with people who love you, not people who pretend to." There were nods, a few murmurs of agreement. But most of all, I continued, tonight is about letting go of the things that try to ruin our joy. Because life's too short to keep the wrong people close. Applause broke out. The DJ picked the music back up. I stepped off the stage, face burning, heart still pounding from the whole ordeal. And that's when Claire slipped a folded note into my hand. She tried to pass this to the security guard when she thought she could still sneak in, she whispered. I opened it. It was a printed photo, grainy and dark, of Daniel and Tessa kissing. But it was dated 6 months ago, during that 2-week break. Below it, scrawled in handwriting I recognized instantly, was one word: liar. My fingers crushed the paper. Claire leaned in. "Want me to rip it up?" "No," I said. Then I turned to Daniel, who was sipping his champagne and chatting with my aunt like nothing was wrong. I walked up behind him and tapped his shoulder. He turned. "Hey, you okay?" I held up the note. His face fell. "I told you, that was from last year. She must have printed it to mess with you." I leaned in close, whispering, "You told me it was a one-time mistake." He swallowed hard. "Guess that makes you the liar," I said. Then I turned, heels clicking on the floor, and walked back to Claire. "Should we call the limo and leave?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, I'm not done yet." Claire's eyes lit up. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to let this wedding reception roll on, because this party isn't his anymore." We laughed, clinked our glasses, and danced our way back to the center of the hall. But while the music played and the lights danced across the room, I knew one thing for sure. This night wasn't going to end the way Daniel thought it would. And then, just when I thought things had calmed down, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I clicked it open. It was a video. And what I saw in that video made my stomach drop. Daniel. In Tessa's apartment, not from 6 months ago, from 2 nights before the wedding. Laughing, drinking, kissing. I gasped. And then the screen faded to black, with Tessa's voice whispering, "Told you. He'd never change." My fingers trembled as I held the phone, staring at the black screen after the video ended. The noise of the reception faded into a distant hum, like I was underwater. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears, my vision narrowing on the screen, like it held the whole truth of my life. He lied. Again. 2 nights before the wedding. Not 6 months ago. Not a one-time mistake. Not just a kiss. It was all a lie. And he stood just a few feet away from me, laughing with guests like he hadn't just destroyed the one thing I thought was sacred, our vows. Claire noticed my change in expression instantly. "What is it?" she asked, placing her glass down. I turned the phone so only she could see the video. Her face dropped, then twisted into a mix of shock and disgust. He told you. He said she came on to him, I said, biting back the lump in my throat. He said he pushed her away. Look at him. He's smiling, like he's proud of it. Claire looked at me carefully, like she was waiting to see if I'd crack, but I didn't. Not anymore. I'm done being the fool, I whispered. He thinks I'll smile and play along just to save face, but he doesn't know me anymore. Claire's face broke into a sly grin. So, what now? I didn't answer, not with words. Instead, I walked across the dance floor, my heels echoing like thunder over the music. Daniel was standing near the dessert table, helping himself to a second slice of wedding cake, chatting with my uncle and pretending everything was perfect. Hey, babe, he said when he saw me. Come try this chocolate one, it's... Slap. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was sharp and deliberate. The music cut for a moment as the DJ noticed something was off. The entire hall went still. People turned. Mouths dropped. Cameras came out. Daniel's hand flew to his cheek, his face pale with confusion. What was that for? I raised the phone high, tapped the screen, and the video started playing loud and clear. Gasps echoed through the room. Guests turned to one another in disbelief. My mother's hand went to her chest. My father stepped forward like he might throw a punch. Even the flower girl stopped spinning in circles. Tessa's voice floated from the phone. Told you. He'd never change. I turned to Daniel and smiled calmly. You were right about one thing, Daniel. This wedding was too perfect to be real. Because this right here? I held up the phone. This is your reality. He reached for my arm. Natalie, wait. Please. Let me explain. Explain? I laughed bitterly. You mean lie again? Then I stepped back and spoke loud enough for the whole room to hear. Daniel Matthews, we are officially done. You may have tricked me into marrying you, but you won't get away with pretending to love me, not after what you did. And I hope this night haunts you for the rest of your life. A chorus of whispers and shocked murmurs filled the room. Daniel stood frozen, looking like a man who just got hit by a train. Claire appeared by my side and handed me a folded paper. The annulment, she whispered. I unfolded it and showed it to him. I had this drawn up 2 weeks ago, just in case. Turns out I was right to prepare. Then I turned to the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, this party just got a whole lot better. The groom is officially disinvited from his own reception. Everyone stood there in stunned silence. Then Claire lifted her champagne glass high. To Natalie, she shouted, and the room erupted in applause. Guests who had once been polite to Daniel now turned away. Some laughed. Others pulled out their phones to delete their pictures with him. My cousins began escorting him toward the exit. Even the DJ got in on it, switching the song to Before He Cheats by Carrie Underwood. Daniel looked back one last time. Natalie, please, just listen to me. No, I said, walking away. You had every chance. As the doors closed behind him, I felt something I hadn't felt all day, peace. But just when I thought it was over, Claire came rushing back from the hallway. You won't believe this, she said, breathless. Tessa. She just tried to get back in. I groaned. Seriously? Oh, it gets worse, Claire said, eyes wide. She brought a man with her, and he says he's your husband. I blinked. My what? He's holding up a marriage license and yelling that you're already married to him. The whole room gasped again. No way, I muttered. Claire nodded. I don't know what kind of stunt she's pulling, but she's trying to ruin everything. I didn't wait. I grabbed the hem of my gown, kicked off my heels, and stormed toward the entrance of the hall, with half the guests following, like it was some dramatic reality show finale. Outside, sure enough, there was Tessa, standing smugly beside a greasy-looking man in his 40s, holding a crumpled document in one hand and a bouquet of wilted flowers in the other. This is Mark! Tessa declared with way too much glee. He's legally married to Natalie. Got the paperwork right here. You're all celebrating a fake wedding. My jaw clenched. What kind of circus is this? Mark stepped forward. You were mine first. You married me in Vegas, remember? I blinked. I've never even been to Vegas. He shoved the paper at me. It was a forged marriage license. My name was spelled wrong. The signature looked like a toddler wrote it, and it listed Tessa as the witness. I held it up and tore it in half slowly, staring her dead in the eyes. You really thought this would work? Tessa smirked. You embarrassed me. You kicked me out. Did you think I'd just disappear? I stepped forward. No, I hoped you'd crawl away quietly. But now, since you brought forgery into this, Claire cut in, holding up her phone. I already called the police. They're on their way. You two should probably leave. Tessa's smugness drained instantly. You wouldn't. I would, Claire replied. Within minutes, flashing lights pulled up in front of the hall. An officer got out, and when I handed him the forged license, his face turned serious fast. Is this your signature, ma'am? He asked. Not even close, I said. The officer turned to Mark. Sir, you're under investigation for fraud. You'll need to come with us. As they began placing him in cuffs, Tessa shrieked, You can't arrest him. He's just doing what I told him to. Ah, said the officer, that makes you an accessory. And just like that, she was being led to the back of the police cruiser, still screaming. Guests inside the venue watched through the windows, jaws on the floor. Some even clapped. And as the police car pulled away, I turned back to the entrance. Claire stood there grinning. Think it's safe to eat the cake now? I laughed for the first time that day. Let's eat cake. But even as I smiled, a thought tugged at the back of my mind. If Tessa went this far just to ruin my wedding, what else was she hiding? Because something told me. This wasn't the end of her drama, not even close. The rest of the reception was like something out of a surreal dream. After the cops drove off with Tessa and her fake husband in crime, everyone in the hall buzzed with energy like we'd just lived through the plot twist of the century. Guests were laughing, toasting, and dancing even harder than before, like they were celebrating more than a wedding. They were celebrating justice. Claire slid beside me on the dance floor with 2 glasses of champagne. To your freedom, she said, handing me one. I clinked glasses with her. To cutting out the snakes. But even as the laughter echoed around us and the music thumped under the fairy lights strung across the ceiling, my gut told me something wasn't over. And I was right. The next morning, I woke up in my suite, still in my wedding dress, surrounded by half-eaten desserts and a glitter-covered Claire passed out on the couch. I smiled, then reached for my phone. Dozens of missed messages, DMs, and calls were already pouring in. That's when I saw it. Tessa had posted something on Instagram. I tapped the notification, and there it was, a full carousel post, 10 slides long, titled, The Real Story Behind My Ex-Best Friend's Wedding Disaster. I could barely breathe as I scrolled. The post was loaded with twisted half-truths, edited screenshots of texts between her and Daniel, cropped photos to make it look like I had been cheating on him, and even a voice memo of me venting during a rough patch months ago. She had dug deep, really deep. And worse, the post had already gone viral. Her followers, mostly clueless strangers, were flooding the comments with hateful things. She used him for the wedding money. Wow, some women are so fake. I knew she looked like a manipulator. I was stunned. Claire woke up when she heard me gasp. What's wrong? I held out the phone. She flipped the story. Claire's eyes widened as she read. Oh my God, this is defamation. Yeah, and she tagged news pages, gossip blogs, even my job's Instagram account. Okay, Claire said, standing up and rubbing her eyes. We're not letting her win. For a moment, I wanted to hide under a blanket and cry, but then I remembered who I was, what I had survived. Tessa wanted to break me publicly now. But I had the truth, and I had people who believed in me. I opened my own Instagram and began recording a video. My hands were shaking, but my voice was calm. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie. And since my former best friend decided to air out a distorted version of my wedding story, let me share the real one. I kept it short, direct, and honest. I didn't bash Tessa. I didn't even need to. I just laid out what happened: the cheating, the fake wedding license, the police. And I ended it with a message for anyone watching. Let this be a reminder that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who will try to destroy you when they can't control you. But if you stay true to yourself, you will rise again. By that afternoon, my video had spread. Not just among friends and family, but strangers began commenting things like, "Now, this is how you handle betrayal." She's so poised. I believe her 100%. This woman deserves a standing ovation and a vacation. By the end of the day, my inbox was full of brand offers, interview requests, and even messages from women sharing their own betrayal stories. The narrative had shifted. The world was finally seeing who Tessa really was. But just when I started thinking it was all behind me, I got a call from an unknown number. "Hello?" I answered, voice cautious. "Is this Natalie Bennett?" the woman asked. Her voice was smooth, professional. "Yes?" "I'm calling from the district attorney's office," she said. "You pressed charges for fraud and defamation against a Miss Tessa Morgan. We've reviewed the evidence, and there's something we need to tell you." I stood up slowly, my stomach knotting. While searching her apartment during the investigation, the woman continued, "We discovered a drawer full of IDs, fake ones, all with different names, different states. It appears your ex-best friend may have been living multiple lives." I gasped. "What?" "There's a strong chance she's been conning people across state lines. You're not her only victim." I felt dizzy. "Are you saying she's a criminal?" "Yes, ma'am. And we're launching a full investigation into what looks like a long-running identity fraud ring. One more thing. You might want to secure your financial records. We found copies of your bank statements in her closet." Now my hands really shook. Tessa hadn't just tried to steal my fiancé. She was trying to be me. I thanked the investigator and hung up. Claire saw my face and rushed over. "What now?" she asked. I told her everything. "Holy crap," she whispered. This girl was unhinged. "She wanted my life," I murmured. "Not just my man, my name, my money, everything." Claire didn't miss a beat. "Then let's make sure she never touches it again." Together, we called my bank, froze my credit, and reported everything to a cybercrime unit. I even had my locks changed, email secured, and cameras installed. Tessa messed with the wrong bride. A week later, I got an update. Tessa had been denied bail. The charges were stacking up and more victims had come forward. The district attorney said the evidence found in her phone, computer, and storage unit pointed to years of schemes: blackmail, stolen identities, and deep web transactions. But my story had a silver lining. The viral video had drawn the attention of a few women's advocacy groups. They wanted me to share my story. One organization invited me to speak at a seminar on resilience after betrayal. Another offered me a spot on their podcast. I started writing a book. One night, after a meeting with a publisher, I walked into a bookstore cafe for coffee and bumped right into someone from my past. Jake. He was my first love. We dated before Daniel. Kind, humble, and back then we drifted apart because of work. But that night, we reconnected. Over tea, then dinner, then phone calls that lasted hours. He had heard about my wedding disaster and said, "You handled it like a warrior." I smiled. Guess I finally figured out who my real people are. And him? He turned out to be one of them. Months later, I was standing in front of a small, intimate group of close friends and family. No ballroom, no drama, just candles, vows, and peace. And this time, Tessa wasn't even on the guest list. The end. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more jaw-dropping Reddit revenge tales. Hit that bell icon so you never miss the next crazy wedding twist, HOA drama, or family feud. More unbelievable stories are already waiting on the channel. You don't want to miss what's next.